Hi, everyone. I'm Carla. I'm a food addict, compulsive eater, and bulimic. And I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I write them down, I call them in, I eat them, nothing else in between. Just for today, abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And my abstinence date is March 31st, 2007. It's great to be here. I love so many people on this meeting. It makes me so happy to be here at the Sunlight of the Spirit. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't time-wise. Um, I'm nervous. So let's see. I'm just going to sit back here and tell my story. You know, I get to hear my story through all you all over this time that I've been in the program, which my abstinence date is March 31st, 2007. I may have said that, but there it is again. And I don't have anything particularly unique about my story. I was born into a family that had, by my judgment, addiction issues, my mom and dad, and got to see early on kind of what diet culture was in my family with my dad, and my mom kind of managed my dad's diets to some degree, and he really, that system worked for him. He gained 30 pounds eating, the way he wanted to eat. And then he went on, some kooky kind of diet for however long and lost the 30 pounds and then started eating the kooky way that he had eaten before. And that kind of just really it seemed to work for him. And that didn't ever work for me. I was born significantly later than my other siblings, so I had a bit of an only child upbringing, and my parents were kind of done, and so I had everything I needed as far as food, water, heat, shelter, all the things, but there wasn't a lot of extra, and something that was always there for me when my parents were, because they were kind of inconsistent, was the food. And my dad worked for a major food corporation, and so he would bring home the spoils from that they would pull off the shelves of the store, and sometimes I'd get to go to the office and get those with him, which was fabulous. And so we had lots of food. And I became a master of sneaking food. My mom had sweet things that she would only have in the morning, and she would tell everyone about them, and but she wouldn't share them. And so I don't know if that's where I got sneak eating, but sneaking, is still something I have a little bit of a hit with, is, trying to get away with something, or, I'm aware that that's a piece that I work with. Anyhow, food was consistent. It took care of the pain, the loneliness, having to deal with situations that kids shouldn't have to deal with. And when I was about 9 or 10, I started puberty early. I started putting on weight, and my mom put me on my first diet. And so I didn't get to have hot lunch with the rest of the kids, and that made me feel really other. And so I had a the thing between the slices, and all other good things. And so, that wasn't a problem. I just traded food with kids at school. There were kids who were normies, or who weren't at all interested in food. And so I would just score the food that I wanted that was more attractive. And then when I got home after school, my mom was she was a housewife, homemaker, and I would just sneak food. She would take a nap every day, and I would try to hit that spot, and I would sneak the food. So I was getting my needs met just in backdoor kinds of ways, and I started to gain weight. And I was put on a series of diets. I remember having a family pediatrician who was always, talking about baby fat and squeezing my cheeks and whatnot, until one day when I was 12 and he used the word obese. And that word, come on. And then it was all of a sudden a problem. And it felt like a moral issue. When looking back, I would put that, but I just felt wrong, like something I was doing was wrong. And I started getting teased at school. This was in the 70s. there was not five, thank you, great. Oh, this is perfect. And there wasn't, there wasn't the obesity that there is now. It was very unusual to be significantly overweight, which I was. And when my mom, when sewing patterns, exceeded those, the size. And so she just, was flummoxed, and we had to go out into the stores. And really at the time it was polyester and really loud prints. And that was not a good look on me. Or I could go over to the men's section and wear Oshkosh overalls. So that's what I did. That was my high school wardrobe. And I became a really great buddy. I was not girlfriend material. And so I, got myself in. I used my sense of humor and, and somewhat natural extroversion to be everything to everyone. So basically, my codependency was right there up there in people pleasing kinds of ways. Still working on the diets, picked up, alcohol. Um, Anyhow, so into my 20s, my parents paid for me to go to a couple of the big box. I went to Jenny Craig twice, I went to Nutrisystems twice, and I lost the same 60 to 80 pounds. But I would get down to a place where life started lifing, and my body started looking like a female body, and I started getting attention, and it was confusing, and I didn't know how to deal with any of it. And I would, and I was always consuming the foods that we don't eat. And I can look back and see that the progression was there, that um, I was less tolerant physically of those substances. And, the food just didn't work as well. And I was using drugs and trying to tamp down all of the things that I wasn't dealing with in my life. And started seeing counselors, and um, I really thought I was morally depraved. And I got into a religion that really supported that idea, or that I saw. I didn't, I just didn't feel like I could do that religion. And so I felt like I wasn't one of the chosen ones. It really felt the script that I had of being less than and other and those kinds of things. And to avoid those horrible, horrible feelings, I ate and I drank and I smoked and I did all the things. And I was not a good employee. I was not a great friend. I was a challenging daughter. I was angry and scared and, acting out. Um, and my issues with my sexuality, I knew that I was attracted to women, in my 20s, probably not until my 20s. But that was, again, part of the story that I had about not being normal, about being, a predator, or just really not worthy of society or what have you. So that I started looking at those issues, and I didn't get into any kind of primary relationship until my 30s. And I had lived alone for about 10 years before that, and moving in with someone really put my disease in front of me in the way that, I couldn't just sneak food as easily as I could before. I couldn't come home with bags and boxes. I couldn't sit and just overeat and overeat unless it was under the guise of socializing. And now that I think about it, we did a lot of that. We had a lot of people over and I felt more comfortable eating the way that I wanted to eat, or that I needed to eat, as I look back on it. And so, it, at one point, uh, my then partner came to me and said, I think that you're an addict. I don't think you can do this on your own. You seem miserable. Um, I think you would do well by going to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting. And there was something about that I felt, I felt that love, because addicts I knew could get better. I knew addicts could recover. crazy people, morally depraved people, I didn't think they had a lot of chance. So there was something, and I knew that she cared for me. Thank you, 5 more minutes. And so I went to my first OA meeting. And I was grateful. I had a lot of social anxiety, but it was in a church that I knew, and so I felt comfortable going there. And the first meeting was rich, rich, rich. There were these people who had these genuine smiles when I walked in the room, let me know I was in the right place, both just as physically in the room and in their languaging that told me I'm where I'm supposed to be. I got the quintessential, pulled stuff out of the garbage can, share, and and yeah, and just they just really welcomed me. And then they had that closing prayer, which is about, we hope that you come to love us as this the way that we love you, already love you. And I felt that, and that just had me coming back. And at my second meeting, a woman talked about weighing and measuring. I to this day don't know what she was doing, but it went in one ear and was like, I bet that's what I really need to do. And then I let it go out that other ear for a few years. And I learned a lot in OA. I got my higher power back, learned that I was one of the chosen ones, as we all are, and I think, um, and got a sponsor and worked the steps. But I was always ingesting the foods we don't eat. Granted, it was higher quality sugar and, it cost a lot more and whatnot, but it was still very bingeable and still set up the phenomenon of craving. And so I started lying to my sponsor. My 3 sensible meals a day were, had convinced myself at one point that a cocktail at dinner was sensible. And, things like that. But I knew I couldn't go back out to a Weight Watchers or a Nutrisystems or whatever. So I just kind of became kind of a visitor at those. I just, stay as close as, and I had heard of Gray Sheet, and it scared me. They talked about people eating out of troughs, and that they were just as obsessed about their food and, whatever. But when I was fully back in the food, and I had some big life events. My partnership was breaking up, and my I was fired from a job at a church, which was my church, and I had hung out about 250, 275, and I gained another 50 pounds, and my health really plummeted. And I just through depression and plantar fasciitis and other things, I feel like I spent the summer in bed. Not literally true. I did, go out to the kitchen and occasionally out onto the patio, but it was really without work and with all of that up, I was just eating and eating and eating. And so I knew I needed to do something, and OA had an annual event that called Unity Day, and I got myself there, and there were two women across the way, and they were glowing. I hadn't seen them in a while, and they just had the glow. They said they were doing Gray Sheet. There was not a question in my mind. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. This is my last chance. It felt like the last house on the block, and I was scared. And one of the brightest lights happened to me just a few days in. Someone told me about the phone bridge meetings, and I could be on the phone with folks and talking about what I did and talking about what they do to make it through each day, and that everybody was buying these crazy amounts of vegetables and chopping all the time. And I could do that and be on the phone multitasking. Not that I recommend that. 1 minute. So here I am in Gray Sheet. I'm telling you, this is the place to be. I love it. I come here because I want to. I come to meetings because I get to, because I need to constantly be reminded that I am an addict, and that in these rooms I have these boundaries between me and my food that are safe. I am safe here. I have a sponsor that walks me through my day-to-day life in Gray Sheet. And if I have issues with the food, that's who I get to go to. She's sponsored. We're all doing this same piece with our food, and it helps me to do life on life's terms. And I get to do service. That's one of the ways I stay abstinent, is by being in the middle of the herd. so that when things are up for me, I'm going to be able to pick up that phone that I don't want to pick up and call someone and talk about it. And so far, time's up. That keeps me from picking up that first bite. And I'm super, super grateful to be here. And I look forward to hearing everyone share. Thank you.